Besides sending the police, you might want to send an ambulance or a hearse.
Hello, Billy Ho here. Welcome to the another edition of the DraftKings show for the U.S. Open. We're going to L.A. for the L.A. Country Club North Course. I'm joined by my man David, the DFS chef on Twitter, and we're going to talk. We don't really have ownership to talk about our pivots and whatnot, but we're going to talk a little player pool. I think since it's just Monday, and it almost feels like we get an extra day or two when pricing comes out early to just kind of get things in order before we start narrowing down who we like. So with this many people in the open and toward the bottom, there's going to be a lot of those open qualifiers. You're probably just going to put an X through right away. But we're going to try to maybe narrow down a player pool for you here today. So I will introduce David. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing well, coming off a decent week last week. Not great. Definitely a couple guys that I had a little too much exposure to that wound up like missing the cut on the number, so that sucks. But big congratulations to our guy Vigar Colts. He took down quite a nice GPP. I think he took down the Mayo contest.
Well, that's what I was wondering. He had two placed up there and he won 5K in the Mayo. So I imagine
Yeah.
he won the Pat Mayo. I did actually take your suggestion. I messaged him about maybe coming on tomorrow or something and for a little strategy sesh. Maybe just to show me how he got to where he hit that. But congratulations, Ryan, Big R, aka Big R Colts fan, longtime Discord member,
Well, thank you.
working hard. He's been real close very often and he got the nuts together. Uh, what he did was you'd asked him, David, about CT Pan, and I
Yeah.
actually considered CT Pan, and I thought that's pretty slick because he was playing pretty well in Texas before coming in, and this is it was a
Yeah.
perfect type course for him, fairways and greens and wedges and make putts. And he just really rallied on Sunday. But it was Doug Gim was the guy that actually hit his radar that I would have been curious on how he landed on Doug Gim, which is the same actually. The guy's usually very accurate off the tee and hits a lot of greens. So his putting's usually his problem. So catch him on a good putting week. Maybe he saw some rolling reports or some trends going up. And see, we got a mascot in the background there. What up, buddy?
Got my co-host.
Yeah, all right. But anyway, we're going to get into some pricing for this week and see what we got going on. Okay, and this is David's stat model, and he is at. I know I haven't said it often enough, but on Twitter he is at the DFS chef. So he does offer this model up for just like $1 a week, and so if you want to message him or get with me, I can get you over to him, and he'll set you up with access to it if you'd like. It's a really good spreadsheet. We're going to look at it a little bit more today, I hope, and see if we can figure out some stuff here. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Dave. And I think what we talked about before was these three guys up top. Maybe the first tier of pricing, I want to go from 8,500 up, but start with maybe a couple of stats that you're looking at, and those three top dogs up there, if you're going to take a stand or not.
Yeah. Well, like you said, today's Monday. We normally record this on Tuesday, so I have the model ready, but I'm still making maybe some tweaks to it, reading a couple more articles. So the model might get tweaked a little bit, but as of right now, strokes gained off the tee, I'm really focusing in on, as well as strokes gained approach. We are going to have to have a little bit of around the green play. I mean, if you any of you have gone on Twitter, you've seen the what the rough is looking like. Looks quite thick. The ball is looking like it's definitely getting, buried in there, almost disappears in the rough around the green. So guys that miss the green are going to have to scramble and do well around the green. Strokes gained putting, obviously, primarily bent grass putting is what I'm going to focus in on. As of right now, I have a good amount wagered, factored into driving distance. That might change. Reading Andy Lack's preview, right up on Rick's website, distance might not be the biggest factor. It is a relatively long course, but I probably will knock distance down a little bit. And what I don't have in there right now, which is probably what I'll shift to, is from driving distance to good drive percentage. The fairways are relatively wide, but it is a strategic shot. You want to land in certain spots, just like Augusta and some of these other courses. You want to land your drive into a certain spot to have a good angle into the green. So that's probably something I might shift to. Birdie or better percentage a little bit, and something that I've been like I said last week, starting to focus in on is birdie to bogey ratio is something I'm going to be looking at almost every week now. And it's a Gil Hanse redesign, and from what I'm reading on the article is, all these courses that Gil Hanse has kind of done the redesign and renos on. Southern Hills was one. The winners of these things are like 6 under. I think both of the redesigns recently that he's done, both winners have been 6 under, and something probably what we might be looking at this week is in that same range. So bogey avoidance obviously will be something that we need to look at too. So as we get into this top tier, like you're mentioning, again, these top 3 guys are going to be most likely very highly owned. It's going to come down to taking your stance. Are you going to fade one of them? You're going to fade 2 of them and lay your money, or lay everything in the sand on one guy, or are you going to kind of try and spread it out amongst the 3? And I can even say 4, because we're back in Cali, and Cantlay's a Cali boy. He doesn't live in Cali anymore. As a matter of fact, a lot of these Cali kids that were born in Cali no longer live in Cali, probably for tax purposes,
Oh,
but,
yeah, I imagine so.
But I mean, Cantlay's a Cali kid, so I got to add Cantlay into the mix. And when we talk about that stuff, I mean, the last time we haven't seen the course, but the last time some of these guys have seen this course were those guys that were considered amateurs back then for 2017, when they believe were playing the Walker Cup. So like Scheffler, Morikawa, Zalatoris were in that Walker Cup team. Mm-hmm. And then even further back, that 2013 Pac-12 championship, where Max Homa won the thing by like 6 strokes. Another Cali-born kid. Other guys that were in that 2013 Pac-12 championship were Patrick Cantlay. Homa shot a 61 back then, and Cantlay shot a 62 back then in 2013. Other guys that were in there were Rahm, Patrick Rogers. Now, back then, the course played about 150 yards shorter, and there are some spots in that redesign that some of the fairways have been narrowed a little bit since back then. So it's going to play different, but I think you got to look at those top 4 guys. Hovland is probably going to be someone that I am going to. It's tough to say. I'm probably going to fade him, and it bit me in the ass because I faded him back at Memorial and he wound up winning the thing.
Yeah. I didn't fade him, but I didn't get him in the right mix of lineups. He was my second man in on a lot of those. But I'm kind of with you on the fade train. If you watched my preview video, I did a flyover on a lot of the holes, and there is a lot of junk around these greens, and the sand. Although Victor Hovland's sand game is looking really good, I think he's got that part figured out. There's a lot of other parts over there, if you're missing greens, that could come into play for him. But putting wise, like you said, bent putters. When I looked at it, I believe it was this Holy Grail here. Yeah. He was way up here as far as bent grass putting for like the last couple of seasons. So he's a guy that I might be interested in. It's going to be tough because you almost feel like it's going to be one of these 3 top guys that's going to win the golf tournament. But then you really, really are going to have a hard time getting somebody like Hovland or Cantlay in there with them. You're probably going to be most people going down into the Morikawa, Jordan Spieth zone. So it's going to be to balance or to not balance. Roll the dice that Scheffler's. I was hoping he'd be back on POA, but bent grass again for Scotty. So I imagine what he's been doing the last couple of weeks is working on that bent grass putting. So That's going to be tough up top to take stands with, and everybody's going to be. I think the ownership will actually be spread pretty good up there. The first pivot guy you'll probably see is Homa, just because his off the tee game has been so bad lately, and that's the only really problem that Homa's had is losing strokes off the tee. So maybe he can hit a few more irons. I feel like there's going to be a lot of irons and 3-woods and hybrids hit off the tee here, because if the undulating fairways, there's going to be a lot of run out and so forth. So I can imagine, because it's still going to be long irons, mid to long. Well, not long irons for these guys, but you know what I'm talking about, like 8 irons instead of lob wedges. So like 8, 9 and pitching wedge type stuff.
That's what I was looking at. Was like the majority of your second shots are going to be 200 plus on those long par fours, because we got I think it's like 5 or 6 of them going in at 450 to 500 yards, and even a few par fours that are even measuring over 500 yards. Matter of fact, I think there's one hole that's a par 4 that's actually longer than one of the par 5s this week.
Probably,
so,
yes.
So you're going to have a lot of second shots that are 200 plus, and then like you just mentioned, you have some shorter par 4s. So you're going to have a good amount of shots that are like second shots that are 125 and less. So it's that mix that we had just a couple of weeks back. Those are I'd say the 2 proximity buckets that if you're going to focus on proximity buckets, you're looking at those guys. Like you mentioned, Homa has been struggling, but maybe the fact that he's back on the West Coast is going to help him this week. And then, we kind of look at it, and, Hatton's been playing out of his ass, and I think he continues that. You mentioned around
looking real good.
Yeah, you mentioned around the green play, especially with that rough. And when you think around the green, I mean, you definitely think of like Spieth around the green is one of the best. But again, I just don't know if I can trust it, even though he got that 5th place finish at Memorial after missing a cut at the Schwab. So he's a little bit up and down right now, and that's always kind of been his thing. Is he is that kind of X factor, but you definitely don't want to go too wayward, off the tee, because what I'm reading is if you do find yourself in that thick stuff, especially off your drives, you're most likely just going to have to punch it back out onto the fairway. You're not going to really be able to really go for it on your second shot if you wind up in the rough,
right?
Off your
because I do believe it's Bermuda grass rough, which is not what you typically see out west, and not what they have seen since Florida. And you know how hard it is to chop out of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, Dave, just a little strategy part of it. When you first see the pricing here, do you think you're going to be looking to maybe try to go 2 up top, and then because there's a ton of guys, and we'll get to it, in the 7K range, all the way through the 7K range that look really, really good. So I want to go over here to the cheat sheet, and so we basically come to the conclusion that we would look to any one of these guys in the 5-digit range. But then it's probably you're gonna have to make a decision with Rory. And he's been struggling with the irons, and that was his problem again last week, is he just couldn't get him dialed in enough. Nice top. I mean, he's just racking up top 10 finishes, but now being sub 10K, he might be an interesting guy to go after, because he hasn't been anything. He hasn't been outside of the top 10 at a U.S. Open since 2018. And then you got, like you said, X-Man Homa. Spieth is interesting because he is ball striking it well, but like his around the green and putting's been what he's been bad at, and then it's just the bizarro Spieth. And then you got guys down in here, like you said, Hatton. Finau, I think I'll have interest in, just because we're back on bent grass, and he typically likes it out in California. So I'm digging him. Down a little further, what do you think about Dustin Johnson? Keep an eye on his ownership, I guess.
Keep that name quiet, sir. No, I was
because he's a West Coast guy too. I don't really know where he's from, but
Well,
when he was on the PGA Tour, he liked those West Coast golf
well,
tournaments too.
well,
So
considering he plays a lot of golf on the West Coast with his father-in-law, with his father-in-law Wayne Gretzky.
yeah,
um, yeah, he's not a West Coast guy, but he definitely uh, is on the West Coast enough, and he's played a lot of these California courses. So I think he's very comfortable out here. Uh, and like you said, you have multiple tabs. You go to that second tab, and you're going to see DJ's name popping up
yeah, your bets and player pool.
on some of the tidbits that I've already put on there. The comp courses that I've been looking at, he is number one since 2018, and a good amount of rounds, 36 rounds, and then right below him is Rom. But DJ is someone I probably will look at. And then I also put strokes gained total Gil Hanse, which it kind of limits you because when you look at the Gil Hanse designs, one of those redesigns that he did, they played it way back in 2014. So it's not something that I really like to look at to go that far back. But
Yeah.
DJ's name does pop up on there. I do think as of right now,
Oops.
this week would be definitely DJ more than uh, like JT, probably even more than Spieth this week, and even more so than Shane Lowry. Shane Lowry definitely. I had a good amount of exposure to Lowry last week, and he kind of definitely faded over the weekend. He did have a strong finish at the PGA Championship, but
Yeah.
I do think that I'm going to probably look at DJ even more than Lowry this week.
Yeah, I think so too. And I always seem to get sucked into DJ, and then he does and then he, just plays, DGAF DJ, where he
Yeah,
just doesn't seem like he's interested. But I feel like maybe after Brooks won the PGA championship and these guys are, now they're coming back to the PGA tour, maybe these guys will be a little more engaged. But he just was a guy that he just can get it done on talent alone. He almost doesn't need to as much practice as the rest of the guys. But this little range here is kind of it might be kind of a dead range, honestly, because people might shy away from DJ. Sam Burns missed the cut last week. Sung
yeah,
Jae struggled, missed a couple of cuts. Lowry, like you said, 43rd. And Decky just seems to he might be a guy that I might have interest in because he's got some good finishes, and he's usually pretty good on those fast bent hard, and I like him on harder courses.
yeah.
Like he had the 16th at Memorial. So he might be a guy that lands in there. So that's what I'm trying to do here is just trying to get an idea of these price ranges and see where we're landing at. Because like somebody like Cam Smith is he's a guy that can gain you 8 to 10 strokes putting, but he can also spray the ball, out of bounds somewhere or in a hazard and can't get out of it. So I'm still not there on him. But down a little further as we dip into the sub, I think I'm out on Neiman. I've been giving Neiman too much juice, but he seems like a guy that the move over to Live I'm not really sure where his game's at because he cost me at the PGA because I thought that was a really good fit for him. And this would normally be 1-2. But I like Rosie. He's just been playing really consistent golf. Tee to green, normally his driver can get him in trouble, but these courses where you don't need to hit it 350 yards, he seems to typically play pretty well. I think I'm not really sure exactly what happened to him, but I think maybe the putter failed him a little bit Sunday because he just treaded water all day long, and I was just waiting for him to do something, and he just never did. Guys down here in the mid sevens are going to be where we probably land a lot, and I'd say it probably starts. I'd say with Adam Scott, he's probably going to be really popular because he plays pretty well on the West Coast too. He won Genesis a few years ago.
Yeah, that's that correlation. A lot of those West Coast courses have that good correlation with a lot of the
Right.
Australian courses, and a lot of Aussies do really well on the West Coast.
Yeah, like the dried riverbed that everybody's talking about runs through the course, things of that nature. But so in this range, Dave, uh, who, like, say starting Tommy down to, we'll just say the whole 7K range here,
Yeah.
and you can start in this mid range. Interested in, like, say between Scott, Reed, Fowler, and then you got Clark, that little range there.
Yeah. I kind of bashed him last week because he was priced up so high and he finished second. Um, I just because of his win equity versus all the guys that were around him last week, I definitely didn't play Fleetwood, and he definitely was probably in the optimal lineup, finishing
Yeah,
second last week. Um, but this
absolutely.
is but this is where I like to deploy Tommy Fleetwood in majors. When the pricing comes out early, pricing is soft. Uh, Sub 8K Tommy Fleetwood, I definitely will have Tommy Fleetwood this week. Um, he's one that doesn't really score heavily on fantasy points. He typically relies on his finishing position for his points, but in a major sub 8K, I definitely can see Tommy Fleetwood being deployed in cash this week. Um, and I will have ownership with him. I do agree with Justin Rose. I think Justin Rose is priced probably a little bit too cheap. He probably should be in the mid eights if I was to redo pricing right now. Um, Bryson looked very impressive at the PGA Championship, and at 7,600, I probably will take a few chances with Bryson. I mean, when Bryson was playing his A game, his implied win percentage is definitely higher than a lot of guys that are in this range. So I have to think that Bryson has a good chance at doing well again this week. Ricky Fowler has been playing great golf. He did miss the cut at the PGA Championship. He missed it by one, but then he came right back, and
Yeah,
he's
I
had
know.
two top 10 finishes since. He's also a West Coast guy. Um, Lives in Jupiter, Florida now, but he is a West Coast guy.
Mhm.
Um, so I probably will be looking at some Fowler this week. You already mentioned Adam Scott. Adam Scott, as a matter of fact, I don't believe has missed a cut in all of 2023. He doesn't play as many events as a lot of these other guys. He typically looks at the events and kind of picks where he's going to play.
Yeah,
But he's a guy that has always done well on the West Coast, like we just mentioned. So I'll be looking at Scott, Patrick Reed. Whenever we talk majors, Patrick Reed always comes into play. I had that
mhm.
strong finish at the Masters, still had a top 20 at the PGA Championship. So he's a guy that I definitely like using in these major events just because of his experience. And again, guys that are priced right in that same range, like Montgomery and Noren and Taylor Moore, I'd rather go to a
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
again,
Reed's always a guy that kind of like that West Coast swing also.
yeah. And again, those names that I just mentioned, I'd rather go to a guy that has better win equity. And Patrick Reed, we know, has the win equity versus those other names that were just mentioned.
Hmm.
Nick Taylor, props to you. Huge win by
Oh
Nick Taylor.
man. Yeah,
But
we didn't talk about it enough, but I was watching it and I just thought, just two putt from there, brother. And he rammed in that 72 footer for the win. And I just thought, geez.
yeah,
And just real quick, Tommy, that was I'm sorry, but that was a bit of a choke job on 18.
yeah,
He made the birdie at 17 to set everything up perfectly for him. All he's got to do is hit the fairway and knock it up there. And everybody's been just dump trucking that 18th hole all day. He hits an iron in the rough, then he lays up in the rough again, and he does and it's all he could do just to make par to get in the playoff. He didn't deserve it. So anyway, that's
yeah.
just kind of how I feel about that. And I didn't play Tommy last week, and it didn't really affect me one way or the other, though. I think I might have moved up the board a little bit. I made a little bit of profit, but I went from maybe making, an extra $10 or $15 because of the 10-point drop of all the Fleetwood owners. So, it is what it is.
Exactly.
But
I
Nick
can live
Taylor, I had in
with
my
it.
1 6 of 6, but it was the worst score lineup after the first 2 days. So I spent all weekend catching up. and then I just barely got, just a decent cash out of it. If it would have been one of my better lineups, 6 of 6s, if I'd have had Hatton in it instead of I forget who I think I had Fitz or somebody up top, but Hatton, if I'd have had him and Fleetwood or somebody like that, would have been a different story.
Yeah.
So anyway, Dave, down here a little bit more. 72. Mito looks good to me. Denny looks good. And what do you think about Henley?
I don't mind Henley. Again, he's one of the best guys in the field when we talk strokes gained approach. We know the guy can't putt. And
That's the thing.
always,
That's the thing he has improved upon, though, which is is why I bring him up.
Yes. So I mean, he's definitely someone that I can look at this week. He hasn't done well if you look at U.S. Open history, but his recent form right now has been quite impressive. And again, we're talking a longer course. I mentioned that I probably will tone down my distance, but at the same time, I might keep a little bit, and I might look at guys that have a little bit of edge when it comes to, hammering the ball off the tee. Ryan Fox is not grading out well on my model, and that's because he just doesn't have enough rounds to have his stats in there. But
Right.
if you look at Ryan Fox for what he's been doing recently, I think Ryan Fox is someone I'm definitely going to be looking at this week.
That's right. We don't have enough on him, do we?
Exactly. And then Hoagie, as of right now, I'm kind of on the fence with. But when I talked about those proximity buckets, that if you're going to factor in this week from 125 in and then from 200 plus, he's one guy that pops in both of those ranges. So Tom Hoagie's someone that I definitely can kind of be on the fence with right now. I'll come down to it, maybe in a day or two, whether or not I'm going to actually click on him. But Eric Cole is someone that I'll probably be clicking on quite a bit.
Yeah.
He just continues to look very impressive.
Yeah.
And
He just gets it done, doesn't he?
Yeah. And at 7K flat, I think it's someone that you can really look at. Again, with this soft pricing, there are guys in the low 7K range that normally every other week, or if pricing would have come out today, would be higher. Cole would probably be one of those, especially based off of his recent form. Sepp Straka is someone that might have a little bit of interest for me. Again, someone I got to maybe do a little bit more research on, but Sepp Straka at 71 is someone that I might kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's on a roll. I mean, he's his last 3. He can play when he gets his irons and everything clicking. He can definitely get it done. He did have a 28th in 2019. Missed a cut last year in the U.S. Open, but this and some of these holes do require that kind of right to left ball flight, and that's what he hits. Like we go back to that old adage, I believe the Honda, where that was the one Kirk won, I believe, and so I think that his drive will be pretty good there. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm probably, if I get into the 6Ks, I'm not going very far. But the 2 guys, Adam Hadwin, if he's okay, I didn't realize. I was watching the video and I saw this dude get speared on the 18th green, and I thought, damn, security, and I didn't realize that was actually Adam Hadwin.
Yeah, I was watching it, and I was wondering why Nick Taylor's caddy went go running. Nick Taylor's caddy went to go running to go let the security guard know, dude,
to stop him from tackling this guy because he thought he was just a random fan. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my God, that was such a hard hit, boy. I guarantee you that security guard felt awful. But Adam Hadwin, who played very well, I think can get out here, and he can get it done on West Coast types of greens and whatnot. So like you said, you don't need to be super long off the tee, and he was playing quite well. Him and Patrick Rogers, I think you mentioned him. He's kind of like a West Coast guy that plays pretty well. One guy that I might have to look into a little bit more is Molinari. I like to try to slide him in on these major championships when he can just go fairways and greens. If he's got and all he needs to do is get the putter rolling a little bit. Joel Damon, I definitely have interest in accuracy off the tee, and he can get it dialed in. He's pretty even across the board, but you can see the fantasy points gained start to drop down here in the negatives when you start getting below here. But you do have a few guys down here like your live guys like Munoz and Ortiz, Scott Stallings. If I go down here, I'm taking proven guys. Maybe Sam Stevens because he's been so good to me lately. And he actually did make the cut last year at the U.S. Open, but he'll probably be one of the most popular 6K plays down here. Anybody you're looking at?
Yeah, you just mentioned Sam Stevens. He'll be someone that I'll probably go focus in on. You mentioned Sebastian Munoz. I don't know, but Tambo always talks baby swag, and Sebastian Munoz and his wife just recently had a baby, so you might have a little baby swag working with Munoz this week.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm also in with Patrick Rogers, Adam Hadwin. Carson Young's been playing some really good golf.
Yeah.
So Carson Young's probably someone under that 7K range that I'm looking at. He's at 69, but if I'm dipping under 7, I'll look at Carson Young. Mm-hmm. Dylan Wu seems to be priced a lot very low at 6,400.
I saw that 6,400. He'll be popular.
Yeah, I mean, he missed the 2 cuts, but he came back last week at the RBC Canadian and looked pretty good. So Dylan Wu at 6,400, I think, is someone I'm going to look at, and that's probably as low as I'm going to go this week. We have a 156-man field this week.
Yeah.
I believe this week is only top 60 in ties, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to change.
Yes, so I wish I would have checked on that.
I believe that's what it is.
U.S. Open is different. USGA
I do believe
rules.
It's top 60, but again, like you mentioned, out of 156 people, you could probably just eliminate like 70 to 80 guys in this field right now. All these other names that qualified, but are kind of like tour pros.
Yeah, definitely. Though a lot of the qualifiers did absolutely, like anybody 6K, probably 6,100. That's what I started at the bottom. I don't know that Michael Bjornsson is 6,200. And he was kind of a swaggy play at the Canadian Open, which he failed. But he's still a pretty good young player. And Roger Sloan, a few guys are mixed in there. Barjon and Haley and a few guys. But really, like you said, Dylan Wu might be as low as I go. But this is just kind of a jump-off point to get us started, maybe start narrowing our player pool down. So I'll probably be out maybe with another show tomorrow or Wednesday. So I appreciate you coming on with me, Dave. And until the next time, we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.